Our notes for today are cellular organelles and cell types. Remember, when you're taking notes, you don't have to write down every single thing on the PowerPoint, but instead you want to write down what you think is important and is going to help you study later on in the future. The first thing we're going to talk about today are cell types. This is a review since we've already covered what prokaryotes and eukaryotes are. Remember, prokaryotes, pro means no, or no nucleus. They are small and mostly primitive. As you can see from the picture here, they are unicellular, meaning they are made of one cell. They all have a cell wall and a cell membrane. Since they're living organisms, they all contain DNA, ribosomes, and cytoplasms, but they do not contain any membrane-bound organelles, including a nucleus. An example that we talked about earlier this year was the domain archaea and the domain bacteria. Right? So all the bacteria we see are prokaryotes. The second type are eukaryotic cells, or they have a true nucleus, right? This dark material right here, this is the nuclei. They all have membrane-bound organelles. They also have cell membranes, just like prokaryotes, that go around the cell. Some may have cell walls, like plants and fungi, but not all eukaryotes have cell walls. Some can be unicellular, like yeast, and others multicellular, like humans. They are the most complex cell, and some examples of them are eukaryotes from eukarya domain, like plants, animals, fungi, and protists. So here's some SOL practice real quick. First, we'll start with the question on the left. How is the prokaryotic bacterium in the diagram different from eukaryotic cells? Well, first, since there is a diagram, you want to interpret what you see here. The answer is going to contain something about this image. So how are they different? Well, let's look at A. It has ribosomes to make proteins. It stores its genetic information in DNA. It has no membrane-bound nucleus. And it has a cell membrane. Well, pro means no, so they do not have a membrane-bound nucleus. The second question, which of the following organelles is present in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes? A nucleus? Well, we know prokaryotes do not have a nucleus, so that can't be true. Ribosomes, okay, I remember hearing something about that. Golgi body and endoplasmic reticulum. Well, if we go back and look at the last slide, we know that ribosomes is the best answer here. So now we're going to talk about all the other cell organelles that we've maybe mentioned before, or maybe you've heard about in 7th grade, but we're going to go over them in a little bit more detail now. The first one is a cell membrane, which protects the cell by controlling what enters and leaves the body of the cell. So here's a picture, but imagine this is a full circle. This thing goes all the way around the cell, and it's composed of a phospholipid bilayer. Bi means two, so it's two layers. We can see here's one right here on the bottom layer, and here's the second up here at the top. They're made of phospholipids. So what macromolecule is this? Excellent, lipids. Okay, there's also proteins in here which help with transport, and there are also carbohydrates. The next one is the nucleus. This stores the genetic information, or the DNA. It also contains the nucleolus, which is this darker thing here. That is going to create ribosomes, assemble ribosomes. Now, if you look around the nucleus, it has nuclear membrane around it with little pores. Those little dots are pores, like a sponge, that allow things to pass through the nuclei. The next thing we're going to talk about are ribosomes. Ribosomes bond amino acids together to form proteins, or what we call protein synthesis. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You might have heard that before. It supplies energy to the cell. It's responsible for a thing called cellular respiration, which we'll talk about in our next unit. The next one is endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short, and this is going to help transport materials throughout the cell. There are two types, and you can see that here. There's rough, and then there's smooth, and you can tell just by looking which one is rough and which one's smooth. The rough ER, okay, has these little dots on them called ribosomes. They are covered in ribosomes. And the smooth has no ribosomes. It's nice and smooth. The next cell organelle we're going to talk about is Golgi, sometimes referred to as Golgi bodies or Golgi apparatus. And this kind of looks like a stack of pancakes in the cell. All right, and it's going to process and sort materials for transportation. And it's going to package these and deliver the proteins that are ready to be transported through the cell. Cell organelles, vacuoles. Vacuoles are fluid-filled sacs that store water, food, ions, and enzymes needed by the cell. Plants actually have one very large central vacuole. It's very, very big, and that's important because plants need to store more water than humans because they can't get up, walk around, and grab a drink like a human can. Animals have many small vacuoles because they don't need to store as much water. Cytoskeleton is a network of proteins that form long threads of fibers that crisscross the cell to provide internal support. Right? Just like a skeleton of the human, it's giving us support. Lysosomes are enzymes that contain digestive enzymes that are going to break down damaged or worn out cell parts. So I like to think of this as lyso, like Lysol means to kill bacteria, right? So lyso is killing or breaking down damaged parts of the cell. Cytoplasm is found in all cells. It's the inside of the cell that's holding all of the organelles together. Okay, it's typically gel-like fluid, and it contains water as well. Centrioles are only found in animal cells, and they're going to help organize spindle fibers that are going to move DNA during cell division. And we'll talk more about centrioles when we get to our cell division unit. Chloroplasts are only found in plant cells, and they carry out photosynthesis in plants that are green, like algae and bacteria. They contain a pigment called chlorophyll that gives plants the color green. Cell walls are also found in plant cells, and they are rigid walls outside of the membrane in plants, algae, fungi, and most bacteria that protect the cell and give the cell its shape. Its shape is always going to be a box-like. So, you heard me talk about animal cells and plant cells. They are two different types of cells, both within eukaryotic cells. So we're going to compare them a little bit here. First, animal cells, as you can see here, are typically more round in shape. However, they can be all kinds of shapes. They contain DNA, cytoplasm, ribosomes, mitochondria, all the same things that plant cells have. Except one thing that animal cells have that plant cells don't have are centrioles. Here. Plants are much different. They are typically box-like or square in shape. They're green because they have an organelle that animals don't have. They have chloroplasts. They also contain cell walls, which gives them their box-like shape. Okay, they also have one very large central vacuole, but all the other organelles are the same as animal cells. So they have few differences. Plant cells are box-like, they have chloroplasts, they have cell walls, and they have one large central vacuole. So now what I'd like you to do is complete the summary and questions. Remember, to get full credit, you need a 1 to 2 sentence summary, and you need to ask at least one question.